After coming oh so close last year, does Tom Izzo have one more Final Four run in him?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Andy Patton, and joined today by the great Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans, because we are talking Michigan State basketball here on the place to get your college basketball content every single day, Monday through Friday throughout the offseason, and here coming up on the season in just a couple of weeks. Want to give a special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. Remind you that you can check out this show ad-free on Amazon Music. Matt, super excited to talk Michigan State Spartans basketball today. This is the 26th team preview we have done over the last couple of months here on Locked On College Basketball, trying to get to as many of those top 30, top 40-ish teams in the sport. And this Michigan State team absolutely qualifies. 30-win season last year, 17-3 in the Big Ten, in a year where Michigan was great, where Purdue was great, where you add in the 4 West Coast schools, and still Michigan State and Tom Izzo feel inevitable at the top of the conference. Couple of non-con losses, and then really just the road trip out to California was really the only blip in conference play for this team. And for me, it looked like a Michigan State team that was kind of just what we've come to expect. A lot of veteran guys, a lot of talented guys, some freshmen that maybe popped in a way that we weren't expecting them to, and just another ho-hum, Elite Eight run for Tom Izzo and the Spartans last year.
It was a return to Tom Izzo basketball. Just defend, rebound, and run. That is the cliche over here, because that's what's worked in his 20-plus years here on the bench for Michigan State. So, yes, you saw that in spades last year, where the few years ever since COVID, really, ever since 2020. We haven't really seen that a lot. It's been a lot of middling seasons, kind of flirting with being on the bubble too. But, man, it was just such a delight seeing them just return to who they once were, and just physical their way, I guess that's how I'm going to phrase it. They're going to physical their way to win the Big Ten by 3 whopping games. I mean, it was a runaway at the very end. And just like you said, that West Coast trip, you're wondering, okay, well, they had to hit a wall eventually. This team can't really shoot the 3-point ball that well. This is going to catch up to them. And then what they do, they ended with, was it 7, 8, if not 9 quad 1 wins to end the season? I mean, woo! That was a nice one, Andy. I hope we can get back to that this year. I'd be delighted. Yeah,
I can't blame you for that. Yeah, it was a really fun season. And even when there were, like, when you hit those walls, you have the early loss to Kansas, you have the loss to Memphis, both on neutral sites, and then you get into conference play, kind of cruise through there until you hit that road trip. And, I think it'll be interesting to see now as the kind of the coin flips, and you have some of the other teams going out on that California road trip. I know we'll talk about the schedule a little later in the show. For Michigan State, it's going to be that trip out to the Pacific Northwest, to Oregon and Washington for them. But what I loved about this team last year was the ability to kind of rebound. They lose those games in California. They take a home loss to Indiana, which was kind of surprising, as Indiana sort of rallied the troops for that game. And then they go on a heater after that, lose that kind of surprising, shocking, maybe not shocking, but close loss to Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament, and then turn around and make the Elite Eight with a really strong performance in the NCAA tournament. Only a bucket away from a Final Four appearance, losing that really close game to Auburn, who was obviously an incredibly good team last year. And it just feels like that team had this moxie and this resilience to be able to kind of come back from losses that, like you said, maybe over the last 5 years or so, that might have been the kind of loss, or some of the Wisconsin loss, or even the California road trip might have kind of spiraled this team into, a 2-week tailspin. And instead, this team kind of found a way to bring it together. Was there specific leadership on the team that you think kind of helped make that happen? And do you see the ability for this team to kind of continue to do that going into next season as well?
I mean, it sounds so cliche, but it was true last year that it was a selfless team. I mean, it seemed like up until mid-February, you had a new leading scorer almost every single night. Sometimes Frankie Fiddler did it one time. Simone Sapala, why not get in there for a little bit? Jaxson Kohler, sure, have yourself a night. But as the season went along, an alpha needed to be established, and that came by way of Jace Richardson, who is a man who gave me many great memories last year, but he will also not be on this team because he decided to go to the NBA. What gives, man? Why chase your dreams?
How dare
What's
he?
wrong with you? How could you? But anyway, I mean, eventually there was an alpha established, but hey, in those middling months, kind of between Maui and the end of the season run that they had, yeah, it was just kind of by committee. You never knew who was going to get hot any given night, but those things reigned supreme. That, yes, the rebounding was always going to be there. That was always going to be anchored by Jaxson Kohler, who statistically, like by rebounding percentages-wise, like is one of the best in Big Ten history since they started charting that stat. I believe in the early 2000s. Don't quote me on that, but he is dynamite. The defense around the perimeter was Loctite the entire season. That was enough to get you to wins, but against all odds, Andy, like I still can't even wrap my brain around it. I think it was either the worst or second worst three-point shooting team under Tom Izzo, yet it was the highest or second highest scoring team. So it really spoke to the tempo these guys played with and able to get to the free throw line, which is something they haven't done in like 5 years. There's an art to that, Andy. And this team found the art last year. I hope they can do it again this year because I just don't know if the three-point shooting will come to head even this season. So, yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic for a team that lost their 3 leading scorers, but also returned 9 players and like 5 or 6 players who were significant contributors last year and are expected to be either rotation players or in the starting lineup this year. There's not a lot of teams in college basketball that can talk about losing their 3 leading scorers and still having such a significant amount of continuity still on the roster. I mean, there's so few teams that are able to get that kind of 9 players back, period. It's just not happening in the modern era of college basketball. And, there's the Purdue's and the Marquettes and the few teams that kind of never, ever use the transfer portal. And Tom Izzo brought a handful of guys in via the portal, but it's still always been built by recruiting well and developing guys for 2, 3, 4 years in the program. And we'll talk a little bit more about the roster specifically and some of those guys coming back. But for a team to have this kind of continuity consistently in the Big Ten, in college basketball, is just such a rarity. And you can see how much it benefits this program for, a coach who has relied on guys developing in 2 or 3 years. He doesn't just plug and play guys into a system where they can kind of thrive in year 1 necessarily. Obviously, we saw that last year with Richardson, but for the most part, that 2 to 3 year development seems so critical. And for me, I'm looking at this roster and I'm thinking, how many teams lose 3 leading scorers and feel like they're still going to be in great shape with most of the rest of their roster returning? It's just not something that's all that common in the sport right now.
Yeah. It's funny, too, because there's a refrain that's going on amongst us Michigan State fans, and that is, and it's actually poetic. You said right off the top, we're the 26th episode that you've done for team previews. That's kind of where we are in all these team rankings, right? Yeah. Like, we're not in many top 25s at all. But the refrain that us Michigan State fans are doing is, okay, let's say you added Jaxson Kohler through the portal. Let's say you added Coen Carr, this athletic freak, through the portal. Let's say you added Jeremy Fears, a point guard that has a really good assist-to-turnover ratio. Let's say you added those 3 guys in the portal. Oh, my God, this team would be ranked in the top 15 squarely. But since it is the old way mom and dad used to do it, it's boring. It's just getting players in there. It's developing them. It's not the sexiest way of growing a program. And it seems like, well, yeah, just like you said, we've lost some key players. Jace Richardson will certainly be a big guy that you're replacing. But, man, in-house is still some talent here. Like, we got a really good rebounder, really good athlete, really good guard. We got a good scorer from Samford in Trey Fort. Let's see if he can turn it around this quickly in the year. But there's still the bones of a good roster to the point where, man, for a reigning Big Ten champion that won the league by 3 games, I mean, whoa, God, no respect, which is actually, Andy, ironically, something us Michigan State fans absolutely love. We thoroughly enjoy being outside the top 25 going into the season because that is where good old Tom Izzo makes his hay when he is nowhere on anyone's radar, just like last year.
It's insane that this team is not getting the respect they deserve. For you,
love it.
Matt,
I love it.
I will move them out of my top 25. Just if that helps some bulletin board material, I can bump them down out of my top 25.
Your services are recognized. Thank you.
Happy to help. But I do want to get more specifically into this actual roster and the returners, as well as some of the newcomers, a couple of really highly regarded freshmen. We'll see what they look like in year 1, but a lot of fun faces to talk about on this roster. We're going to break that down, including what we think this starting 5 might look like, coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anybody else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes, they sweat all the details. And Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Nappa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like college basketball players, Mazda sweats every single detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. Folks, most people cannot name their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's their 401ks, their properties, or their investments. And when you don't have the full financial picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean and easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. And Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money. And you don't even have to touch a spreadsheet. My wife and I spend a lot of time making sure our finances are up to date. We got a little one at home, and it is nice to know where all that money is going. And Monarch makes it so simple for us to review our finances together. We can see our budget, our goals, and our spending activity all in one place. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, folks, segment 2 still here with Matt Sheehan talking about the Michigan State Spartans, the fighting Tom Izzos, coming in after a easy win in the Big Ten last year, a run to the Elite Eight. And like you said, Matt, this is a team that's not getting a ton of preseason love, despite the fact that they returned a huge chunk from last year's incredibly good roster. You mentioned Jaxson Kohler. He's coming back. Jeremy Fears is back. Coen Carr is back. Carson Cooper is packed. We're going to talk about our projected starting lineups, but a lot of places have those 4 guys all in the starting lineup. And again, there's just not a lot of teams. How many teams, I would venture a guess, that of power conference top 3 finishers, the amount of them returning 4 starters. I know these guys didn't all start last year, but they have 4 starters who were on the roster last year. There's just probably not that many teams in that mix. And to me, we're going to talk about the additions, and we're going to talk about some of the new faces, which tends to be the conversation people like to have this time of year. But for me, the biggest storyline for Michigan State is the fact that most of their production are guys that were on this roster last year and have already developed for a year or 2 or 3 under Coach Tom Izzo.
And it's also guys, too, that have really showed growth, not just in, their sophomore year in Coen Carr's example or junior year in Jaxson Kohler's, but just the second half of those years. And one of the big storylines going into this season is how are they going to space the floor? Because with the players they lost last year, some of them were your leading scorers like your Jace Richardsons, but there were guys that you had to respect their three-point shot, even if the percentages didn't say it. On their careers, like Jaden Akins, good three-point shooter. Trey Holloman, good three-point shooter. Xavier Booker, rumored to be, along some point in his life, a good three-point shooter. When those guys queued up a 3, along with Jace Richardson, of course, you had to respect the three-point ball. This year, it's a lot of unknown. Like, Trey Fort's the top guy. He's 38%, and he played mid-major, low-major basketball. But at the end of last season, okay, you're seeing Jaxson Kohler's outside game blossom a little bit. Now, is he Larry Bird? No, but he might have a respectable shot. Same with Coen Carr, which that's just been the talking point ever since he's gotten in here and ever since he's just been terrorizing every single rim in the gyms of Breslin Center or any Big Ten court. Is if this kid can get a jump shot, oh my God, he's going to be an instant lottery player. You saw some of that last year, and in the little practice clips you see, it actually looks like a smooth jumper. Now, I'm not expecting 42% from behind the arc, but can those be respected? We saw it at the end of last year. Could he parlay it into a good offseason and just hit the ground running with both him and Kohler? And then also Carson Cooper was shown on practice film hitting a three-pointer. Like, what fantasy land is this? But you're going to need those guys to show a little bit more offensive game than you have in the first half of their careers and seasons last year. And there's reason to believe that they can actually show that too.
Well, we would talk about the transfer portal class. You mentioned Trey Ford a few times, and I'm thinking we're going to talk about him mostly because the other additions here are probably not guys expected to contribute right away. That would have been different with Caleb Glenn from Florida Atlantic had he not suffered an injury that will keep him out. I think he was unfortunately going to be a big part of this roster. Very talented player last year for the Owls. You also get Divine Ugachukwu coming over from Miami. He was decent last year for a very bad Miami team. He's not an outside shooter at all, 17% from 3, so that's not an area he's going to contribute, but he can pass the rock a little bit. He's got some athleticism. You get Denim Wojcik coming in as well. He's from Harvard. He didn't play last year, but was kind of a bit player in the Ivy League. So again, probably not a super big time contributor there. But Trey Fort, you mentioned him again. He feels like a guy that is going to add something to this roster, a much needed something in that outside shooting, a guy who was a very productive scorer last year. Samford was a good program. Their coach moves over to Texas A&M, expected to do some big stuff over there. Bucky Ball, Bucky McMillan. And Fort's a guy that I think, from watching Samford a few times last year, you can see why Tom Izzo likes him, and you can see why he wanted to bring him in. And this is a guy that I think he's not exactly my X factor pick. That's going to be Coen Carr. Spoiler alert there, but Fort feels like somebody that's going to have a big role for this team.
He has to. And yeah, I mean, he was brought in for a few reasons. One, his size, 6'4". I mean, you need something along the wings there, especially when Jaden Akins leaves. And Jaden Akins, very streaky offensive player, consistent defensive player. But that is where maybe the concern lies. We'll get into the good stuff with Trey Fort, but so far in practice, Tom Izzo spoke to the media, I believe this was last week, and said essentially that Trey Fort can't even cover Tom Izzo's own mother, which, God bless her soul, she's got to be 97, 98, if not even older at this point. So Tom Izzo, known coach where if you are not playing defense, you just won't be playing in general, doesn't really like what he sees out of there. So that's going to have to take some strides before the season kicks off. Now, there are some good things with Trey Fort, too, and that is his shooting. Like I've said, you're missing a lot of guys that, in theory, could shoot the three-point ball last year, does offer spacing. This kid did it for Samford. I don't have the stats at the top of my head, but I think he averaged like 6 attempts per game. He canned them at 38%, not too shabby. Now, he did play Mississippi State the year prior, 34% shooter, so not lighting the world on fire, but God, if you watch Michigan State last year, you would take that percentage, certainly. So he's a willing shooter. He can get hot. He's a microwave, whether that comes off the bench or whether that's to start the games. Who's to say? But yes, they needed a guy that can score from behind the arc, also offer size. You get it there with Trey Fort. So, Mr. Fort, please, I beg you, just learn how to stay in front of someone on defense because I want to see you play this year, young man. Please. A
couple of freshmen joining this roster as well. And again, one of the things that we've seen from Michigan State is occasionally they'll go out and get the top 10, top 5 recruits. You know, we've seen them do that, but oftentimes they're recruiting guys that are often ranked more in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and they develop them into, you know, 3-year starter guys or guys who end up blossoming after a year or two in the system. And then we got 2 guys here, Cam Ward and Jordan Scott, both guys right around 50th overall in the 2025 class. Ward's kind of a small ball 4 type. Scott's a bigger jumbo guard. Based on looking at the roster and kind of where they have guys, it doesn't feel like either of them are super big time contributors in year one, but I'm curious if you think either of these guys are going to end up being guys who play a lot this year, or if they're more like, hey, 2 years from now, we're going to be hearing a lot about this kid.
I think we see Cam Ward more than most people would think. I'm not going to say it's 26 minutes a night, but I think there's going to be a role for him, especially just like you said, in that 4 position. But he's already built physically for college basketball. And from what I understand, too, and what you've seen on his tape, too, like he's got the motor, or as us Spartan fans like to call it, that dog in him, Andy. Like he's an aggressive player. I expect at least 2 or 3 technicals out of him this season, but I will welcome every single one of them because he plays with tenacity. But with Jordan Scott, it's interesting because Caleb Glenn, guy from FAU, that's our 3. Maybe he'll start. Maybe he'll be the first guy off the bench after Coen Carr. But yeah, he's out most likely for the season with the patellar tendon tear. Not great. So he might be the first 3 off the bench because Coen Carr, I think, gets the starting spot at the 3. Maybe some days he'll start at the 4. Who's to say? But he might have an increased role just because of lack of bodies now at that position. I mean, do I think he's going to be ready? Do I think if Caleb Glenn was here that he would be having a big role? No, not at all. But someone's got to be playing out there. I mean, heaven forbid if Coen Carr gets into foul trouble or if he's playing more of that 4 position. I mean, so Jordan Scott's going to have to grow up very fast here in Big Ten basketball.
Looking at the projected starting lineup, this is what John Rothstein had, and I tend to think it seems pretty accurate based on, especially with the Glenn injury, there's just not as many options, but it's 4 returning guys, Cooper, Kohler, Carr, and Fears, and then Fort starting at the 2. Obviously, you mentioned that Tom Izzo's not particularly thrilled with Fort defensively. I'm not sure who would step in there, whether it would be somebody like Ugachukwu, whether it'd be another returner who might step into that spot or not. But,
I believe,
Kurt Tang is kind of the other guy I was thinking maybe, but is that kind of how you think that starting 5 is going to shake out for this team?
Yeah, isn't that so boring, Andy? Like, it's supposed to be fun. Like, oh, hey, here's a battle going on for the starting five. Like, no, like for them, you could chisel into stone. And yeah, that fifth option is that Trey Ford. Is it Kerr Tang? I'd be a little surprised with Ukachukwu just because of his, I was going to say 3-point shooting prowess, but lack of. I think both of us could shoot better than 17% in ACC play. But it's either here nor there. It's either going to be Trey Ford or Kerr Tang. That's the hot topic. But I think that both those guys will end up splitting minutes pretty equally to start the season, honestly. So, yeah, I'm sorry, Andy. What a boring conversation the starting five topic was, man. Shoot.
We've had ones that were more boring than this, to be honest. And like you said, I think the boring factor is part of the reason that this team is getting under-ranked. You were exactly right. If these were transfers coming in, people would be all over this team as a top 15, maybe even top 10 team. But the guy that I really think is the most interesting player on this roster, and honestly, it's not close, is Coen Carr, because not only can he quite literally jump out of a gym or, catch alley-oops from passes thrown in the stands like we saw from him a few days ago. He also is a guy who dramatically improved from freshman year to sophomore year, 5 more points per game, doubled his rebounds, doubled up pretty much every stat last year. And we've seen that athleticism. I mean, this dude is one of the, if not the best pure athlete in college basketball. The outside shot is not there, took less than half a three per game, but everything else seems to be coming along. And to me, the difference between this team's ceiling and this team's floor rests with Coen Carr more than any other player on the roster. Would you agree with that?
That is such a great question because I am split. Now imagine a pie, everyone, and there's 5 equal slices of this pie, all at 20%. Like, what a horrendously boring answer this is. But like, my God, you could talk me into any of these starting 5 players. Carson Cooper, can he develop a low post game and get you 2 points just on the low block, which is something we haven't seen from a big man here. It feels like since Xavier Tillman, and it's been a while since we've seen that. So can he offer just a slight shred of offensive play? Jaxson Kohler, can he really be the stretch 4 player? Coen Carr, can he develop a jump shot, which you just talked about? But I kind of go to the guards here. Can Trey Ford, 38% at Sanford last year. That was cool. That was great. Can you do it in Power 5 Big Ten basketball? Can you even sniff anywhere close to that? Can you play defense? Or do I just go all the way up to the top with Jeremy Fears, because that's another kid whose offensive game, scoring the ball, you saw like the bones of it kind of last year. I mean, his 3-point shot wasn't like horrible, wasn't great. Can it get a little better this year? How does a full season post gunshot injury look? And that's not nothing. Tom Izzo has talked about that, how much stronger he looks, how he's added to his vertical. So that's why I'm going to go all the way to the top here. I'm going to go with Jeremy Fears, actually, because, it was a little rocky to end the season last year. Maybe that amount of games in his first full season got to him. But can you be smooth, consistent, all season long, limit the turnovers all season long, and maybe, just maybe, have like a jump shot that other teams have to respect and not have them play off you 15 feet and make it basically 2 guys in the paint on defense every time you bring the ball down the court here. So you can talk me into any of these guys. I'm going to go with our guy Fears, though.
Well, one of the things we love about this team is not only do they have an incredibly competitive schedule in the Big Ten, but Tom Izzo put together a really competitive non-conference schedule as well. When you have so many returners, you might as well put them to the fire right away, and that is what we're seeing this team do. We're going to talk about this non-conference schedule. We're going to talk about how this team's going to do. Can they win the Big Ten for a second year in a row? All that and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, every single day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun and simple way to add more excitement to football. All you do is pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards, Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. PrizePicks also just added stacks. It's a pretty neat feature. If I want to ride with a player, I can select their passing yards, their rushing yards, and their touchdowns all in one lineup. And their new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it does not count against you. So folks, download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, folks, segment 3 here. Still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast, still joined by the great Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans, as we are talking about Tom Izzo's Michigan State team. Won the Big Ten last year, bring back 9 players, from that roster, add some fun additions in the transfer portal. We covered all of that. Now we're going to take a look at what is a very fun non-conference schedule for this Michigan State team. Not going to read through every single game, but they do have some very fun matchups. They have an exhibition game at UConn. Always fun to see those high-profile exhibition games. That should be a good one. And then they second game of the season, Arkansas. Really good matchup between Tom Izzo and John Calipari, two of the best in the game. Really excited to see how that one shakes out. And then their fourth game of the season. Again, there's not a lot of time to ramp up for this team. They got Colgate, Arkansas, San Jose State, and then they're taking on Kentucky at the Garden. That game on November 18th. That's going to be a really fun one. They also got two Blue Bloods from the ACC later in the schedule, North Carolina in Fort Myers on November 27th, and then they'll take on Duke in East Lansing. Doesn't get a whole lot better than that, bringing the Blue Devils into town on December 6th. Fantastic schedule. Tom Izzo is one of the few coaches that every year you look forward to seeing what the non-con is going to be, because you know it's not going to be a bunch of cupcakes. There's going to be some fun games on it. This is one of my favorite schedules in college basketball in the non-con slate. Going to be really excited to see how these games shake out.
I love it for so many reasons too. And, one of them is obviously the entertainment factor. Like, it's fun to watch your team play in cool games, obviously, but also too, like, when it sets up for the tournament, I'm actually more surprised more teams don't do this, because you don't really get penalized for losing these games. Yeah. But you get penalized if you lose to cupcakes, like your quad 3, quad 4s. Anyway, it's for a different topic of conversation. Andy, I'm on barttorvik.com. I don't know how much time you spent on that website, but I'm looking at their preseason.
Open on my computer right now.
I was going to say, I just figured it's your homepage, honestly.
Pretty much.
Of the top 20 for the preseason, do you know how many teams Michigan State is playing amongst those top 20 teams right now?
Well, there's like 5 or 6 in the Big Ten, so probably like 9, 10, something like that.
It's 10. It's 10. 11 if you want to count UConn. So, but formally it's 10. You play Michigan, one of those teams, twice. So, yeah, it's Murder's Row. It's a bloodbath. One of my favorite things every single year is on Twitter when the non-conference gets announced, and you see all the other fans be like, "Oh, is Tom Izzo crazy?" And then we're sitting here like, there he is. He's still got his fastball. Painting 99 on the black right now. Here he is. So, yeah, I love that he iron forges his team. Does it always go well? No. Does it always produce results, though, once conference play rolls around? I would say more times than not here. So, seemed to work out pretty well last year. So, I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, this is going to be a really, really fun slate of games. And then you get into a conference slate that, again, is going to be 20 games long, and you got some long road trips. You're not taking the California trip, but like we mentioned, you are taking that trip out to go to Washington and as well as Oregon. You got those two teams out on the road. A lot of teams struggled with that road trip last year, and, of course, the California road trip as well. So it'll be interesting to see kind of if those things start to balance out as teams get a little bit more used to those long trips. We'll see if Mick Cronin's still complaining about the long road trip for UCLA as well.
He is.
Yeah, I'm sure. I doubt he has stopped complaining about it since that happened. But looking at this schedule based on the home and road games, obviously some tough ones here. You got at Purdue, at Wisconsin. Those should be some challenging ones. And obviously you mentioned the road trip out west. And then you got pair of games against Michigan, pair of games against Indiana. Those should be tough, especially with new staff at Indiana. Pair of games against Rutgers, which will hopefully not be too tough for Michigan State. But ultimately, this is a really tough conference. There's a lot of really good teams. I know that most people are not betting against Purdue right now, and I think understandably, considering the amount of talent that they're bringing back. But after Purdue, feels like a lot of teams kind of right in that mix. Obviously, the Michigan State's big rival, Michigan's going to be in that conversation. I think Illinois is going to be in that conversation, but I think Michigan State's right in that conversation as well, and their offseason may not have been as fun or exciting as some of those other teams, but to me, this is a team that's going to finish somewhere between second and fifth or sixth at the absolute worst, and I'm it's hard for me to bet against Tom Izzo. Let's put it that way.
I'm not going to fight you on much that you said right there. Maybe that makes me a bad Spartan, that I'm just basically already handing the trophy to Purdue. But look at that team.
Yeah, they're stacked.
Good Christ. No, they're an incredible team. If not now for the national title, then when for Matt Painter. So, I'm going to go with Purdue number 1. But, yeah, I do expect them to be somewhere in that 2 to 5 range as far as, the standings at the end of the year. The schedule, even though the Big Ten, it's just dog after dog, it didn't break too bad for Michigan State here. Yeah. There's no 3-4 game stretch that's like a gauntlet where Michigan State saw that last year, where it was there was a stretch. It was 4 games in 9 days, and 3 of them were on the road. Now, of course, they won all 4 games because that's just what kind of year it was last year. But I'd be asking a lot to do that all over again. But I was really worried because North Carolina, Duke separated by 10 days. And I thought, oh, God, they could fit 2 Big Ten games in there. They could fit a really tough opponent in there. Yeah. It's not a walkover opponent. It is Iowa, but it's at home, and it's just one Big Ten opponent in between those 2 days. And then you go to Penn State, and then you go to Nebraska, and then you host USC, you host Northwestern, you host Indiana. I can name a lot worse ways to start Big Ten play. So can you get off the ground 4-1? Dare I say even 5-0 to start Big Ten play? There is a world where that happens, and then the rest of the way, again, I don't see like a 3-4 game stretch where you're just like crying before the games even start like I did last year. So that's nice.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised when I saw the schedule come out that they only threw 1 game in between Duke and Carolina. I think that was a little bit of a nice gift. Again, Iowa, I think, is going to be a decent team, but you could do a lot worse than just 1 game against Iowa between those 2 blue blood programs there. So we talked a little bit ceiling floor for this team. For me, I'm just going to tell you, I'm projecting this team's going to be maybe not quite on the 2 line like they were last year, but I think that I think this is a top 5 seeded team. Very likely. I think probably 3, maybe 4 seeds, somewhere in there. I think that this team will kind of come together in a way, again, with so much continuity. You don't need to like wait till January to see how this team looks. Like, you're going to have a good sense already early on. We'll see how Trey Fort develops. I think that's a big storyline for them, and certainly some of these other players. As you mentioned, last year we saw a lot of guys get better in the second half of the year. I expect that'll happen again this year as well. But I'm looking at a team that there's no reason this team should not be back in the Sweet 16 and shouldn't realistically contend to be in the Elite 8. And once you're in the Elite 8, it just takes the ball bouncing your way the right way, and you're back in the Final Four if you're Tom Izzo. And it feels like there is for a team that's not getting a ton of preseason love, as we've said a few times, the chances of this team being an Elite 8 or Final Four team feel pretty good to me. And a lot of that obviously has to do with the coach who's done it and who's been there and has that experience to get this team there. If this was the same group coached by somebody else, I'd be a little bit more hesitant, but I'm pretty bullish on this team. And I think there's a good chance that they're definitely in the second weekend, if not, playing basketball into April.
I like the team a lot too. And I don't know if I have any room to talk about ceiling and floor, because last year I said that the floor of this team, like, if everything just goes horrible, like, okay, like miss the tournament, of course. I said the absolute ceiling for the team last year was a 4 seed. And I was thrilled to be wrong, but like, holy smokes, I didn't think things would break that good for Michigan State. And that was even without like Xavier Booker being a key contributor like we all thought he was going to be. And, that's last year. For this year, I do kind of see the ceiling. I'm going to go back to the same well I drank out of last year. I think it will be that 4 seed. Maybe you get up to a 3 seed if things really break your way. Let's say guys develop outside shots. You could keep that up-tempo offense still rolling hot. Fine. Yeah. Great. The floor, I'm not going to go as doom and gloom as last year, say, like, I could see them playing the NIT. Maybe, like, just where we were for the last few years, like, kind of like 7, 8, 9-ish. Like, the offense doesn't fully blossom. You're not getting enough out of your point guards, both Fears and Ukachukwu. Let's say that Trey Fort, he isn't, just developing well in Big Ten play. Like, there is a world that I could see where things don't go too well, but man, just having the floor of Coen, Carr, athletic freak, Jaxson, Kohler, dynamite rebounder, Carson Cooper. He's like 38 years old now at this point. He's been around the block many a times. He should be giving you some stability at that position. And then, the guy on the bench, Tom Izzo, he knows a thing or two about this game. I think that the floor will be like that 8-ish. So I'm going anywhere from 4 to 8 in the seeds. A tighter window than last year. I went way too wide last year, and I still missed, but gonna tighten it up a little bit this year.
Matt Sheehan, thank you so much for joining today. Always fun to talk hoops with you. I'm really excited about this Michigan State team. It's going to be an absolute blast. Folks, that is going to wrap it up for us today here on the 26th team preview of the season. Isaac and I will be back with you for a conference preview on Friday. We're going to have some fun stuff for you on Thursday, and then we're going to get into some more of those team previews next week as well. Thanks again, folks, for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family, even though we were nice to Purdue on this show today. Cheers to the McBruins. Let's go Wild Popes. And until next time, peace out.